In this video, let's have a go at trying to understand the link between simple interest and compound interest, how you get compound interest from simple interest. So what is it, first of all? Just thinking about the word compound, is that even something that you've used in your everyday life? Probably not very often. Sometimes you might have heard of if you get in trouble for doing things, that it compounds. So if you've done one thing wrong at home and then another thing, things compound and sort of feel like they get worse. I suppose in terms of money, if things compound, there's more money created. So let's have a look, read through what we've got on the screen here. So it occurs when interest is earned on a principal amount, which we've talked about already back in the simple interest video, plus any interest that's earned so far. So it's not just calculated once, it's compounding and calculated multiple times, as is written there. And so then the difference between the two methods is best illustrated in a table, which we're going to do. So there is a formula to use for compound interest and eventually your graphics calculator, but it's quite handy to understand what's going on. So the example we're going to show you is an investment of $2,500, 4% over 3 years. So apologies if my video is over parts of what you're trying to see here. Let's highlight what we've got here. In table 1 is simple interest. Table 2 is compound. We've got the years 1, 2, 3, and each time round, well, we start with 2,500 is our starting amount. And then let's see the similarities or differences that happen here. So for compounding interest, the amount that interest that's calculated, it changes. So have a look at the first row in each table. We took the 2,500, we took that percentage rate, which was 4, and we worked out the interest once. So each time around, it was $100. So at the end of that first year, we've ended out with 2,600. But it's being compounded annually, and so we're going to go through it year at a time and see what happens. Next time round, look at that starting amount that we work out the interest on. In the simple interest table up the top, we start with the same original rate, that principal amount, the 2,500, and you do the 4% again for 1 year. So notice that each time these are 100. But what happens in the compounding table, we take the end amount at the end of the first year and we start with that at the beginning of year number 2. So it's not 2,500 this time, it's greater, it's 2,600. And then we do 4% by 1 year and we get our amount at the end of year 2. And look at the start of year 3. This amount here is the starting amount of interest. So it's the same simple interest formula that's used each time. Do you notice that it's principal times by the rate times by time? That's used in compounding interest, but it's the amount that you start with for that principal is changing each time. Having a look at the total amount, this is quite a small example, so it's not a huge difference. Simple interest was 2,800 after the 3-year investment. This is 2,812 and 16 cents. So not much difference at this point in time, but as the numbers get bigger, it compounds even more. As you can see, so if you were to invest that money, put it into a bank, you get a better return if you choose compound interest and simple interest. Let's do an example where we have to work through the table together. So we're being asked to calculate the final value of an investment of $6,000 at 8% PA per annum, compounded annually for 3 years. So you can follow the example of the table before. So we're writing year 1. The principal amount is that $6,000 to start with. Our interest is the P times by R times by T. So it's that simple interest formula. Take our $6,000, multiply it by our 8% for our 1 year, and our answer for that is $480. And so our balance at the end of the first year is $6,480. Coming into year 2, what is our principal amount now? It's $6,480 because that was the end of the first year amount. Just phrasing it in a different way, what we're working out is 8% of this amount, so of 6,480. You may remember of is the equivalent of multiply, and the 8% is 8 over 100. So maybe I'll just write that one time. 8%, 8 over 100. Of is multiply, times by the principal amount, times by how long. Now, it's multiplied by 1, so I'm not going to write that this time around to save some time. Our interest amount there for this year is $518.40. Add that on to the principal at the start of this year, and we have $6,998.40. it's good to be using your calculator along with me while I'm doing this, just to check. Occasionally I do make mistakes, but so you're practicing using the same keys. Year 3 now. Our principal amount was at the end of year 2 there, so we're going to do 6998.4, and let's work out the interest. 8% of the principal amount, 6998.40. Working that out is 559.87. Adding that on to the principal amount at the start of year 3, and that's, well, I suppose you don't need equal to, because if you're doing a table, it'll be in its own box, is $7,558.27. Go back and read the question then. Calculate the final value of an investment compounded after 3 years. All of that information. So that is our final value. It's probably quite good etiquette to write that out so that your teacher doesn't have to read that from a table. Final value, the $7,558.27 with the dollar sign there. And part B, how much interest was earned. So that's the final amount. Well, it's the difference from what you originally invested. So how would we find that out? You take this large number, the final amount, and you subtract off your initial investment, which was $6,000. And working that out, doing that subtraction, we're left with $1,558.27. Another way, can you think of another way that you could have perhaps worked that out? How much interest was earned in each of the 3 years? Here was the first year interest amount, here was the second year, here was the third. If you add all 3, you would come to this same amount as well, and you might do that to double check. As you can see, this is quite tedious to do this via a table. That's only 3 years. If you had an investment over a much longer period of time, it's going to get very tedious. So there's got to be a quicker way of doing this, and there is. That's using the formula. Join me for that in the next video.